busting makes me feel good. My fault. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire just came out, and I almost fell asleep watching it. The original Ghostbusters was a comedy movie that took itself seriously, but never really took itself seriously. It was goofy throughout its runtime, with main characters that sort of stumbled into becoming heroes. And it was awesome. Now, how does that concept turn into a coming-of-age action movie? Beats me, but now we got Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I wouldn't say this movie's terrible. It had a few likable characters, a villain that needs to start bulking but was a little threatening, and a great starting off point after the success of Afterlife. And it has a kid named Podcast. But there were a lot of problems with this movie that made it a forgettable mess. It had a boring first half, entire characters and plot lines that felt completely useless and rushed. And it has a kid named Podcast. The most noticeable problem to me though was the barrel of monkeys amount of characters in it. There were 13 main characters that the story followed. You can't have an Avengers level amount of people in a movie with like 2 sets. It just becomes overcrowded and distant. I don't think it would be possible for any movie to effectively build 13 characters in a 2-hour runtime. But Ghostbusters Frozen Empire bravely accepted that challenge by putting in characters that did zero good for the story and shitting on my bond that was starting to build with the new characters introduced in Afterlife. The first half of the movie was dedicated to the average day in the life of the Spangler family, but every scene with them just felt awkward. Phoebe was just mean in this one. She had a proton stick up her ass the whole movie, constantly trying to rebel and blame her mom and Paul Rudd for shit they couldn't even control. And she was likable in the first movie, but all of her charm just got written out of this one. And the mom was just as bad. There had to have been some Coraline body snatcher hijinks going on, cause she did not seem like she cared about her kids at all. Or about anything really. She was just weird. The family had no chemistry. Phoebe was in a constant state of Disney Channel original movie rebellious teen, and I am convinced the mom was a little alien pretending to be a human. Dumbass was just being a dumbass, and Paul Rudd was trying his best. Speaking of dumbass, I am 99% certain Finn Wolfhard is a vampire. Apart from my problems with these characters, the plot felt really messy. The whole plotline with the Fire Master was rushed and really stupid. He provided some alright comedic relief, but I mean you could buy a flamethrower for like $50 on Amazon. You didn't need this guy. And halfway through the movie, Phoebe becomes acquainted with the ghost lesbian. And after 2 scenes of them talking for like 5 minutes, Phoebe basically kills herself so she can become a ghost for a few minutes, even though she could already communicate with the ghost perfectly fine as an alive person. Alright, I'm lost. The ghost lesbian story was that she set a fire and died in it or something? I don't really know. So she had fire all around her that conveniently dodged her face. Which just makes me wonder, would Phoebe have gone through all that bullshit to be with her if the fire gave her the Two-Face treatment? Editor's note, I guess they knew this plotline was dog shit cause there was not a single scene of the ghost lesbian in any of the trailers. So I guess that's something. The original Ghostbusters were back again for Frozen Empire, and Bill Murray was actually happy in the press releases, which means he went on set for one day, said all dark and horny at 12 o'clock, and went on his merry way with enough money to buy a cruise ship. But I think they were actually a decent part of the movie. Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd had a lot of screen time and contributed to the plot, and nobody expected Bill Murray to be there for more than 5 minutes, so that wasn't really a letdown. One plot point with them that makes no sense though is that Ernie Hudson unveils this high-tech ghost hunting lab that he for some reason was hiding from the family up to this point, even though they're the ones answering the ghost calls without pay for some reason, which also makes no sense. So instead of Phoebe looking like Eeyore the whole movie because she wasn't legally allowed to bust, wouldn't it make more sense for her to just take a job in the lab, working on stuff she's very clearly passionate about and using her busting genius to do something instead of just causing problems? You know they call me a busting genius. My fault. Even given my problems with this movie, the last half did manage to keep my attention, and some of the jokes landed. Although no matter what they did, neither this one or the original could compete with the incredible staple of cinema history that was the 2016 reboot.
She's doing a marvelous impression of a deflating balloon.
So with all this in mind, I'm gonna give Ghostbusters Frozen Empire a Tweedle patented score of 4.5 out of 10. Watching this movie made me realize that busting just makes me feel alright, and while there was potential, I didn't have a good time watching it. So if you haven't seen Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it's definitely one of the movies of all time. And if you have, bust all over that subscribe button for me. There's a kid in this movie named Podcast.